Across Russia, security services have confiscated computers from dozens of advocacy groups and newspapers critical of the Russian government. The security forces say they're searching for pirated Microsoft software. Others say the goal is really intimidation. Joining us this morning, Bloomberg contributing editor and security expert Richard Falkenrath. Richard is a partner at the Chertoff Group. Before that, though, he was Deputy Homeland Security Advisor to President George W. Bush. Richard, let's talk about Microsoft's role, because that's the really interesting part of the story. To read that the Russian government is intimidating people isn't going to surprise anybody. To find out that Microsoft pretty much has been playing along with it, this is all, of course, according to a front-page story in the New York Times yesterday, is kind of surprising, is it not?
Yes, it is, and Microsoft certainly doesn't want to be in that front-page story. But they find themselves in a position that's not at all uncommon for global tech firms. When you do business in a country like Russia, you need to cooperate with the government, and if the government happens to be repressive, sometimes you're going to get caught up into it. And it looks to me like that's what happened in this case.
Microsoft responded to the Times that it is going to tighten its oversight of legal affairs in Russia. Is that to say, based on your analysis of the situation, that Microsoft kind of let its oversight of those guys in Russia get a little bit lax?
Yeah, I think the local representatives of Microsoft seem to have gotten out ahead of the company and done things, made accommodations with local authorities that corporate headquarters is not that comfortable with.
What choices does a company like Microsoft really have in these kinds of circumstances? Presumably, Russian security officials come to Microsoft, say, we need your help. Maybe they don't even go into any kind of explanation about what their real intent is. Can the company ask questions, demand more information, or do they really have no choice but to follow through? Well,
they have some choices, but with a country like Russia, it's sort of you're in or you're out. And if you're going to cooperate with the security services across a range of issues, you need to do it on the things they care about, too. Russia is a hotbed of cybercrime. It's a hotbed of software piracy. And these are forefront issues for Microsoft they need to take seriously. They don't get an a la carte menu of which things they're going to cooperate with.
Now, one of the groups, Baikal Environmental Wave, which has been protesting the reopening of a pulp and paper mill on one of the world's great freshwater lakes, says that it had actually purchased licensed software from Microsoft. Is there no role for Microsoft to say to the security forces, hey, wait a minute, these guys have licenses. We have copies of the POs right here.
Yeah, and in retrospect, undoubtedly, Microsoft headquarters is saying, boy, why didn't we do that? Why did we let the New York Times lead with that particular anecdote? It's not a good anecdote from Microsoft's perspective.
Let's talk about what this means from the American point of view. Microsoft is an American company headquartered outside Seattle in Redmond, Washington. Is this at all an issue for the State Department, either before the front page story in the New York Times or now that the story has appeared?
Well, Russian repression of pro-democracy movements is an issue for the State Department. Microsoft getting caught up in that, not so much. But it's a long-standing issue for us going back really to the first Bush administration when the Soviet Union fell, to promote democracy in Russia, and where it struggled, the U.S. government has taken mild stands on matters like that.
But when presented with these kinds of quandaries, really, do companies like Microsoft, or better phrased, should companies like Microsoft turn to the U.S. Embassy, turn to the State Department for guidance on how to proceed?
Well, they can talk to them, but they're not going to be a lot of help. I mean, in the end of the day, Microsoft has a Russian subsidiary that does business in Russia, and they need to reach an agreement with that government. That government is sovereign and controls its own space. The State Department here might give them a little advice on the side, but Microsoft shouldn't think that the State Department is going to help them out a lot.
And is this, from your point of view, more or less consistent with the kinds of choices companies like Microsoft and Google faced in China? Like you said, either you do it their way or you don't do it at all.
That's right. The government is in charge, and internet privacy, internet freedom is nice, but in the end of the day, these companies are trying to make money, and if you're not in the market, you can't make money. You need to obey the government.
All right, Richard, it is always great to have you here. For that perspective, gleaned over years working for the New York City Police Department and in the Bush administration, our own resident security expert, Richard Falkenrath. He's a principal at the Chertoff Group.